You're tuned in to HorrorSlop, where the stories are rotting, truth is twisted, and sleep, forget about it.
Yeah, welcome to the pit. It's gross, it's creepy, and honestly, it's kind of my vibe. Hope you like nightmares, because tonight's tale, it slithers.
Straight from the darkest corners of Reddit. Real stories, real fear, and just enough blood to stain your soul.
So at least grab your bed sheets, so grab a flashlight, and maybe a therapist.
This is HorrorSlop. And now the first descent. One story to open the night. Just enough to crack the door and let something in.
You won't find it on Google Play or the App Store. There's nothing about the game on any public websites, other than this cautionary post. It doesn't matter whether you're a good or a bad person. It indiscriminately chooses targets. And then an incongruous window might pop up. But before I made a rash decision and ended up infecting my phone with something nasty, I decided to do some research. I'm not exactly computer savvy, but I didn't trust either the yes or no option. I didn't want to mess with the window in any way. User 1, can anyone help me? Nobody seems to know anything about this game. My friend played it non-stop for a week, and then he went missing. That was 2 weeks ago. There are daily search parties, but I don't think they're going to find him. He said it wasn't really a game. He said he saw a face outside his window. User 2, you have to select no. User 4, I selected no, but I keep hearing creaks. And I don't think it's in my head. User 6, just leave the pop-up window open, guys. You don't have to select anything. User 5, what? For the rest of my life? What if something accidentally knocks it? User 3, your funeral. The more I read, the more anxious I felt. I had expected the pop-up window to be a virus, but everybody was telling ghost stories. Stop being a superstitious baby, I told myself. That guy's disappearance had nothing to do with the game he was playing. Eventually, after a weekend of horrified contemplation, I opted for User 5's idea to turn off my phone. In fact, I took it a step farther and reset my phone to its factory settings. From a bathrobe in your bedroom, Tanya smirked. You're both just envious that I can scroll through Reddit and play games away from the watchful eye of my employer, Corey said. Speaking of games, Lee, have you played Can You Hide? It just popped up on my phone, so I thought, why the fuck not? Corey laughed. Tanya thought it must be a virus, but it's just a cool augmented reality game. Corey thrust his phone down on the wooden picnic table. It was already open on a game window, a map of our surrounding area. A small green marker indicated Corey's location in the park, and there was a small red marker moving along nearby roads. Once a day, from 2 to 4 in the afternoon, the game takes place. I have to hide. It tracks my location in the real world, so I have to keep moving. I wanted to delay coming to the park, but I don't think the Red Seeker will find me here. Besides, it's 10 to 4. Nearly made it, Corey said. Suddenly, the marker was in the park. Corey was wrong. It had found him. I prepared for something dreadful to happen. I prepared for my friend to be caught. And that's a wrap. Corey said, scooping up his phone. 4 o'clock. Yet again, I bested the game. It got close this time, though. Damn. Just 100 yards away. On the game map, the park was a featureless green patch. I could see Corey's green marker, scarcely standing out from the grass, and I could see the red marker northeast of our location. The victory box read. Tanya groaned and mumbled about Corey's game addiction, and the two of them resumed their conversation. I was about to dive back into reality, putting the silly game out of my head for good, but a sudden noise terrified me. A creak. "I think somebody's actually seeking you, Corey," I whispered, pointing a shaky finger at the tree. "I don't think you should play that game anymore." "Your phasmophobia really kills my buzz sometimes, Lee," Corey sighed. "There's no boogeyman following me." Corey and Tanya told me to take it easy and get lots of rest. The following day, the two of them pinged me incessantly on WhatsApp. I was still reeling from the terrifying thing I'd seen behind the tree. Transfixed by terrible thoughts, the workday flew by. I was starting to believe that maybe I'd become unwell. Perhaps I'd suffered a psychotic break. "I'm driving right now, Tanya," I said. "What's dash?" "Slow down," I replied. "What's happening?" "The game started at 6, Tanya tearfully explained in a fragile whisper. "I think you were right, Lee. I think someone's actually seeking us. We saw a horrible face at the window, and then there were creaking sounds in the house. We're hiding in the attic. Corey's pulled the door up, so we don't think dash." No, Tanya whimpered. At that point, I decided not to go home. I diverted to Corey's house. An 8-minute journey. Barely any quicker than the police. "Please dash," Corey began to plead. The screams of my two friends were deafening. I was so fixated on reaching the house that I didn't hang up the call. It was only as I tore onto Corey's driveway, mere minutes before the police, that I realized I'd been listening to sounds of squelching, snapping, and, most hauntingly of all, creaking. I don't understand what the game wants. I don't know where the missing people go. All I know is that resetting my phone wasn't enough. On my drive home, after a long night of tears and police questioning, I could swear I caught a glimpse of a peach-colored mask peeking around a postbox. And then, as if to confirm that menacing thought, there was a notification on my phone. That unmistakable ding of hell. "Can you hide?" "Yes, no." I moaned in horror, and that was what damned me. My car uses voice recognition, and it somehow registered my terrified vocal reaction as an answer. Perhaps I've chosen the safer of the two options. I know many of the Discord users suggested no, but I can't stop thinking about what I read on that server. I haven't heard anything yet, and the game hasn't started playing. But Corey didn't seem to hear the creak when he was playing the game. Maybe, like him, I've just been missing it. I'm terrified of the creaker. I'm terrified of where he might take me. 10.
That last one tasted like fear and poor decisions. Let's see what the next bite stirs. Hope you're hungry.
I Saved a White Snake, by Fainting Goat. That was where I found the snake. It was curled into a subtle hollow in the middle of the iris bed, head pressed flat against the ground. Blood oozed sluggishly from a cut on its body. It was small, no larger than my palm, with its body coiled tight around itself. Within the week, it started to come out of the box while I was present. It slipped through my plants, and I let myself believe that it was following me as I made my way down the garden beds, tending to each patch in turn. Sometimes I saw the crows, perched in the trees or on the fence, but they did not bother the snake so long as I was there. I bought some crickets from the store and began to bring them out to it, leaving their dead bodies near its lair. Soon, it began to wait for me, and one day it slithered right to me. I put my hand down and it looped its neck over my fingers and then ran across my palm. It twined around my wrist and I stood, taking the snake with me, and I stared at it as it stared back at me from my hand. I felt the snake as it slid over my foot, its scales cool and soft, those strange ridges bumping against the ankle bone. It was growing quickly. Already, it was a foot long. Something about this felt so natural, so expected, that I didn't hesitate to answer. I told the snake that I couldn't keep the holly alive and I felt I had failed my husband, because he had planted it. To compound my problems with the garden, the grass was also ailing, with parts of it turning brown and dry as if scorched. I found some rabbits while checking on one of these patches. There were 5 of them, about the size of my hand, frozen inside their burrow under a layer of torn grass and fur. I stared at them for a few minutes, enchanted by their size and the white patches on their foreheads, and then left them alone. I wondered about the snake, if perhaps it would harm them, but the snake was not quite so large yet. I'd swapped to feeding it mice, buying them frozen and thawing them before bringing them out. The snake was polite, thanking me for its meals, telling me it didn't yet dare to leave the safety of the garden. Indeed. Its tone was wry. I am not quite big enough to make a meal out of them. I thought of the last sight I had of my husband, body twisted up, mouth gaping for air. Certainly, the funeral home made him look peaceful, but that wasn't him anymore. It was a body, nothing more, and it can't dispel what he looked like in the last seconds of his life. Now, staring down at the rabbits sprawled before me, I saw the similarities in their twisted limbs and open mouths, silently screaming at whatever injustice had ripped away their lives so soon. I went, as if in a trance. And when I came to myself and returned to the backyard, I found that the rabbits were gone and the burrow they'd lain in was now a deep hole, stretching down into the black earth. I filled it in and packed the earth down. I dove deep into the earth, "Auntie," it said to me. "I sought the realm of the dead to find your husband." And I almost did not hear what it said next, my mind frozen on those words, on their impossibility, but the wild, daring hope that fluttered in my chest, hope that I frantically held back because I did not think I would survive having it extinguished if it were allowed to take root and bloom in my heart. "But I am sorry, Auntie," it continued, "I could not travel far enough. I am still too weak. Let me stay in your garden a little longer and then I will try again." The spring passed and turned into summer. My neighbor's vegetable garden began to yield its crop, albeit small, for their garden was suffering with the rain and the heat and their plants had barely grown this year. But there was enough to harvest and I saw them out there one day, gathering the squash and taking it to the grill to cook it. I could smell the charcoal and the steak and earthy scent of fresh-cut vegetables. They had company over. Another couple, and I could hear them laughing and talking on their back deck from inside my house. It hurt, in an odd way. My house had been silent for many months now. I'm not certain how long it was before I became aware of the quiet coming from the backyard. It struck me suddenly and I thought it odd, for it was still bright out and surely their company wouldn't have gone home so soon. I went to the back window and looked. And then a whisper from the fence. "Auntie," the snake called, "come away. Come away. Look away." I did, and stood there with my back to the bodies of my neighbors, and wept while the 911 operator said it would be okay and the ambulance would be there soon. His words were empty and I think he knew that too. "I'm sorry, Auntie," the snake murmured. "I'm sorry. I'll try to find them as well in the realm of the dead." They took the bodies away, putting them on in bags so the bystanders on the sidewalk couldn't see the bloody foam and their blackened eyes. The police came and took the food and then they questioned me. No, I didn't see anything odd. No, I wasn't aware of anyone that would want to hurt them. I'd not gotten out much, honestly, not after my husband died. I answered everything they asked as best as they could and then they left. I did not see the snake after that. I found the hole it left behind, digging down into the earth as it sought the dead, and I loosely filled it back up. I didn't know the snake had returned. It hadn't called to me and I was not the one that found it. Someone came to my door, one of the people that had been taking samples of the neighbor's yard. he wanted to do the same for mine. Some soil, he said, and some clippings of the flowers and bushes. Nothing intrusive. I asked what he was looking for. Just checking for contaminants, he said, and he didn't need to explain anything else. They were afraid my neighbors had died because something had gotten into their vegetables. I took him around the side of the house and opened the gate for him. I stood by the fence as he poked around at the dry patches of grass, stabbed a tool like a spike into the soil and dropped the dirt clod into a bag. Then he stepped up onto the stone slabs that marked the boundary of my garden bed and put one foot into the soil, reaching for the remaining irises. I covered my mouth with my hands, stifling a scream. I turned, walked back into the house, and only then did I allow myself to fall apart. I screamed, I sobbed, I clawed at my face with my nails. What was I to do? Should I call the police? Did I tell them there was a giant snake in my yard? It's not. But that is how it is. I don't want you to go, I said, but I don't think it's safe for us if you stay. Then the earth shifted, a ridge along the line of its back, and subsided, and I knew the snake was gone. My plants continue to die. Some of my neighbors have moved out and left behind houses that will never sell, after a little girl was taken away by ambulance when she fell to the ground with convulsions, her mouth filling with bloody froth. The snake is gone, but its poison remains. I sneak out at night to take care of the garden. A handful of plants remain. I'm not sure for how much longer they'll live, but I feel I must do this, that if I let them die then my husband will be entirely gone. I know they are poisoning me, but it was already too late and I am only hastening the inevitable. There are only a handful of days left to me. I feel the poison in my bones. I am glad I will not be alive to see the day the snake surfaces to rain its venom down upon the earth.
You feel that? That weird pressure in the room? Yeah. That's the algorithm. It knows you're watching, and it gets real cranky when you don't feed it. A simple ritual helps. Click the little thumbs up, tap subscribe, say its name 3 times into your phone mic. Kidding, probably.
Engagement appeases the darkness. You know what to do.
Good, human. Now, back to the horror.
My grandfather, who fought in the Second World War, once told me a story that has haunted me ever since, by Mandark. My grandfather was an exceptional man. Born in crushing poverty, he took to a life of crime in his teenage years before straightening up and joining the British Indian Army, where he served with distinction. After India's independence he won multiple national-level gold medals in wrestling and subsequently completed his education and started a successful trucking company. He had lived such an extraordinary life he spent his old age just reliving his memories with friends and family through his great storytelling skills. Us grandkids just loved to sit around him as he regaled us with tales from his well-lived life. He always seemed so joyful when he did it too. But that wasn't the worst of it. You see, one thing they delighted in doing was using our soldiers as bait to draw the rest of us out. They would torture our soldiers, to the brink of death, and tie them up to a tree, usually in a clearing, and hide in the forest. If we went out to help, they would pick us off from the trees. All we could do is just stay hidden and listen to the agony-filled death throes of our fellow soldiers. Wait till the last drop of life was slowly squeezed out of them as they cried out for their mothers. It was one such incident that changed everything. Or at least, an incident that looked deceptively like the nightmare that we had gotten used to. James Wavell, a distant relative of Archibald Wavell, the then Commander-in-Chief of the British Indian Army, and later Viceroy, was in charge of us. He was the one who sent us out on patrol that day. There were about a dozen of us, cutting our way through the jungle when we heard the screams. But not this time. Instinctively, almost on a primal level, we knew where the screams were coming from. And almost as if in a daze, we gripped our guns tight in our hands and followed, or more likely we were led there, if that makes any sense. It didn't take us long to find the man who was screaming. He was dressed in Indian Army fatigues, or at least the trousers, his shirt was torn and hanging from his shoulders. He was, God this is hard, he was tied to a tree, and had his hands on his stomach, trying to push down his intestines that were spilling out like thick, bloody little ropes. And his screams. It's like I can still hear them. Like they're still making my ears ring. The pain in those screams, I could feel it in my bones. I began walking towards him before I even realized what I was doing. I felt a hand on my shoulder and was pulled back forcefully. I looked into the eyes of the man who pulled me back. They were wide open. Alarmed. Like he knew something was seriously wrong here. He shook his head slowly, warning me not to go ahead even as that man continued to scream. I gulped and nodded. We spread out into the woods, with our guns drawn, keeping each other in sight, to brace ourselves for the Jap ambush. I winced as twigs snapped underneath my boots. I realized I was afraid. Not of the Japanese presumably hiding in the trees somewhere close to us. No. But the wounded man in front of us. It was so bizarre. I can't explain it. But I felt it. Deep in my soul. Every fiber of my being was screaming at me to run away. To keep running until I left this man far behind me. My legs were aching, my neck was stiff and I could hear someone to my right crying softly in terror. It was like we knew. Knew that it was not that man, but we who were about to die. And then it happened. Then the world was plunged into silence. He began running towards me. With these big, loping strides, covering half the distance within seconds. Thankfully, that sudden burst of motion had restored my senses and I started running away from him. I dropped my gun, my backpack, and just bolted. I leapt over small rocks and overgrown roots, ducked under branches, waded through thickets, stumbled in the dark, but kept on running. My boots at one point got stuck in the soggy mud, but I pulled myself free and pumped my legs to keep running. I stole a glance over my shoulder and saw him gaining on me, intestines slapping against his thigh as he ran. He was smiling. Ear to ear. Like the chase was the best thing to have ever happened to him. Like he wanted to take his time and truly savor the hunt. Move. 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 Must go faster, I thought. I heard screams behind me, accompanied by loud tearing and squelching sounds. He was ripping the patrol squad apart. One by one. And soon it was going to be my turn. I heard his footsteps. Slow. Deliberate. Felt the leaves shift and crunch underneath his bare feet. Then he began whistling. It was oddly melodious, like a bird singing an ode to the forest. I heard the fallen tree creak as he stepped on it and glided towards me. Dark drops of blood came crashing down on the ground inches from my feet. But for some odd reason, he didn't kill me. Maybe it's because he wanted to leave one survivor alive, to go out and talk about him, spread the terror he had inflicted on our patrol squad. I don't know. I don't even know when he left. I spent the whole night there, alone, shivering in that little hole. Even when the sun had come up and bathed the forest floor with light, I still refused to come out, such was the extent of my fear. It wasn't until another patrol came across me that I felt safe enough to come out. They had to carry me back on a stretcher. I was delirious with fear, and every muscle in my body was exhausted. But I was alive.
Whew, telling gave me chills. But hey, we're just getting started. The next one's sharper. You'll see.
I feel like it means nothing to say he was big into gaming, because who isn't nowadays? Specifically, he was into these Facebook fantasy games. I don't even know what they are exactly. I think they're like shit quality RPGs that people play for free if they can't afford to subscribe to World of Warcraft. I used to get game requests from him every day, luckily you can just block those, so I did. Anyway, this one game he used to play had a chat function which a lot of people use to meet people. It's really not that weird. I have other friends that have met hookups in a similar fashion. I was actually pretty happy for him when he told me about this girl. I'll call her Clara. At least he had someone to talk to, even though the girl was from Ohio, which is about a 7-hour drive from us. The red flags started popping up pretty early, though. Out of curiosity, I looked at Clara's Facebook profile and it was immediately suspicious to me. It's not like she seemed out of his league or anything. It looked like the kind of girl he would date. Choppy purple pixie cut, face piercings, a collarbone tattoo of a pokeball, a light dusting of acne on her pale skin. Anime convention type of girl. Definitely his type. What got me was, she uploaded a number of pictures with her in it, but there were no tags for any of the other people in the photos. They had also been uploaded all at the same time. Most of the friends she had, and the only likes/comments on her pictures and posts were, well, guys that seemed to have an intimate relationship with her. A lot of comments like, "There's my beautiful girl," a lot of flirting with that dumbass, face. Nothing to do with the occasion, or the other people in the picture. They were all about her. My next thought was that maybe this was a profile for cheating. Like, she was with someone but she made this in order to lure men into getting with her on the side. Seems like something people do. I told my then girlfriend/current wife about it and she suggested reverse image searching a few of her photos to see if they showed up anywhere else. Besides Clara's profile, all the photos traced back to social media accounts of someone named Erica from Fort Lauderdale. But when I went to click on the links it came up as, "This page does not exist," like she had deleted everything. Even though Noah was mad at me for trying to talk some sense into him, I gave it one last shot. I texted him about what I had found, hoping that this would convince him that something was up. She was obsessed with those stupid games, too. And she wanted to meet people, especially romantic prospects, since she was pretty lonely. The pictures were to show her online friends what she looked like, and to prove that she hung out with other people at some point and wasn't just a hermit with no life or social skills. He told me that he didn't appreciate me prying into their relationship, and that he had told Clara about what I said and she didn't want me to talk to him anymore, and he had agreed to it. The last thing he said to me was, "Just in case you're still hung up on this, here's a picture of us FaceTiming." Sure enough, the screenshot showed him video chatting with the girl from the profile. Same hair, same face piercings, same tattoo. She looked normal, just kind of tired. Before I could say anything or apologize, he blocked me. I felt really bad for her. I almost ran away from home in high school, because my parents didn't approve of me being gay. But once they realized I was serious about leaving, they said they could work past it as long as it meant I was home. I knew this wasn't exactly the same thing, but it was clear she was pretty hurt. Best. Noah. Until today. It was a mugshot of a woman, severely abused and emaciated, with most of her teeth and half of her hair gone. My wife told me it had appeared on the local news on TV and she immediately recognized some of the facial features, as well as the pokeball tattoo on her collarbone. It's Clara. I immediately contacted the police with everything I knew and they said they're going to be launching a full-scale investigation. It will have to be as discreet as possible, though, for fear that the perpetrators will go to extreme measures to cover up their crimes or even flee from the area. They even took down all the media coverage right after I called. They've offered to fly me and Noah's mother out there so they can talk to us in person, since we're the only people who seem to know much about it. I realize there's no going back, and I have to go, but I am absolutely horrified of whatever is behind this. I got a call about an hour ago, from the police station. They told me that Clara was still in pretty bad shape, and she still couldn't answer their questions. But they did say that she kept repeating the same thing, over and over and over.
Still here? Aw, look at you. Brave little meatbag. Too late to back down now. Next story's already watching.
I froze. I could hear sirens approaching. I came out of the stairwell, but already the doors in the hallway were closing, and I could hear them locking. I was alone, and out in the open. One guy in particular sounded like the one in charge. "Okay, are we in position?" "Yes, sir. We know the suspect is here in the building. C team is across the campus, as ordered, and B team is covering the back entrances. He will not exit the building on our watch." Then, that's when it all happened. The chief yelled out, "Hold it. Put your hands in the air. Lay down on the ground. Leave your hands where we can see them." More gunshots. The scream happened again. And again. I pulled away from the bullet hole and sat back in the closet. Then the scream began to fade. I heard a thud, and then more footsteps. The chief spoke again, but he was breathing heavily, like he had been badly wounded. At home that night, I ate dinner, and waited to see what happened on the news. The live coverage had ended a long time ago, but when the news came back on at 10 o'clock, I wanted to see everything. As it started, I saw classes had been cancelled for the rest of the week, but then things started to get weird. The news talked about a student who they refused to name, how he had come to school armed but had been taken into custody after a short firefight. Stranger still, in the footage of the hallway where the scuffle had taken place, the door of the closest which had been my refuge was totally unscathed. Not so much as a scratch on it, let alone bullet holes. It appeared to have been replaced outright, well before any investigation could have been completed. The news said no one had been hurt despite the gunfire. But I knew people had been wounded, even killed. I'd heard them screaming in agony as something vicious had attacked them. I know there was no shooter at our school. It could have looked like anyone. Something tells me that squad wouldn't have helped me either. And, good God, is it really dead?
Still with us? Good. That last one was just the warm-up. Let's go deeper.
Growing up in a very religious home, I was taught that women must always serve men. Given the fact we were created from a man's rib, it only made sense that we were put on this earth to be companions for them. We set off for our honeymoon hours after and quickly boarded the plane to Bora Bora, a beautiful gift from his parents. The first day was perfect. We spent all of our time wrapped in each other's arm, filled with all the love our bodies could muster. I remember gazing into his dark brown eyes of heaven, asking myself how I got so lucky. Then, I watched as his mood slowly shifted the moment I mentioned our future children. "Let's just hope our first is a boy," he remarked. I stared back at him confused. Why would the sex of our baby matter? I chalked it up to the fact that all men must dream of having a boy first, to carry on their legacy and last name. After all, women must serve men.
You're still tuned to HorrorSlop. Frequency unknown. Stories endless. Let's spin the next nightmare.
For those who don't know, when you're too low for your fixtures to gravity feed into the main sewer line, you use a grinder pump to cut up all the shit into a pulp and then shoot it up through a pipe into the main line. There are worse things than forever screwing around with a cheapo pump that's all clogged with shit and tampons, and I've dealt with most of them, but like everything else, it's better to do the job right the first time. "Nah," said Frank. "This guy's legit. He asked for top of the line. Money is no object," he said. He actually said that in those exact words. "Guy's a dream client, Ernie. You in?" I knocked once and the door swung open like the guy was standing there waiting for me. "You must be Ernesto," he said. "That's me," I said. "Everybody calls me Ernie." "You're Charlie, right?" I stuck out my hand. He looked at it from behind thick glasses for a few beats, and declined to shake it. I shrugged it off. A lot of people think that plumbers just root around and shit all day with their hands. Wouldn't want to soil the guy's delicate little fingers. "Never late," I said proudly. He closed the door in my face and I actually heard him drive the deadbolt home. I smoked a cigarette there on his lawn and threw the butt into his little flower garden. Then I went around back and waited for him to open up the bulkhead doors. It took a few minutes, but he finally did. I looked up at the pipes running overhead. It looked like there was a vent there that I could tie into. "Sure," I said. "This will work." I didn't see Charles again until last week. The job went fine, we did top-notch work as always and the checks came right on time in the mail. I just never saw Charles. We came in through the bulkhead entrance every day, did our thing, and then left that way. Ernesto. I have been misled. "Really sorry about that, Charles," I said. "I'll be there first thing Monday morning to look at it myself." "I'm afraid that's unacceptable," said Charles. "This problem must be addressed immediately." "Are you aware that I am a lawyer?" asked Charles. "I do, thank you for coming," he said. "I understand that it's the weekend, and you must have other plans, just as I am sure that you understand the need to fix your mistake as soon as possible." I felt like socking the guy in his smug face, but I just nodded and followed him down to the basement. "What have you been flushing into this thing, Chuck?" I asked. "It's Charles, as you know. And I was told that this unit would successfully grind up a mini-horse. I assure you that the deposits have been smaller than a mini-horse." I didn't know if the guy was putting me on, and I didn't care. I just wanted to fix the problem and get out of there. He is insane, I thought. Charles. That was a joke. I'm sorry you misunderstood, but it was a fucking joke. I mean, that's your problem right there. Under no circumstances should you put an animal in this thing. Don't put anything in this thing except for the normal things that come out of your body that you typically flush down the toilet. It took some effort not to just explode on this asshole. Charles waved his hand in the air, as though dismissing a slave. "Very well. Just get it fixed." "Sure thing, boss," I said. "Just gotta dislodge the blockage. I'll go grab my stiffest snaking tool from the van. Hopefully I can get it that way. Be right back." Charles nodded, and I went back outside and headed to my van. On the way there, I saw a little girl with her face pressed up against one of the windows of the main house. Must be his daughter, I thought. But she looked off, I guess. Her eyes were sunken back in her head, and she had a deep cut along one side of her face. Her hair looked like it hadn't been washed in months. I gave a smile and a wave as she stared at me, almost like she was dead, and turned back to my van. "Looks like I'll have to go in manually," I said. I pulled my respirator out of my bag, and put it over my face. Even so, the unbelievably foul stench seeped through. I looked at what I was holding. It was a bone. I tossed it in a trash bag. Then I yanked my snaking tool out, put the lid back on the tank, and plugged it back in. There was the whir of the grinder, and the sudden whoosh of everything draining. Ernesto does it again, I thought, trying to take a little pride in an otherwise shitty situation. "That'll do it, Chuck," I said. "Mind if I wash up a bit in the bathroom before I get my check and go?" I nodded. It wasn't a pig finger, because pigs don't have fingers. It was a human finger. It looked like it had belonged to a child. I puked again in the shower, and then, with my head spinning, I shoved the finger into my pocket. I washed up in a daze. "Is everything okay in there?" asked Charles through the door. He had come back with my check. "Sure," I said in a voice that I'm sure was cracked and terrified. "Almost done." I finished up and went back into the main room of the basement. Charles was holding the check out to me. "Here is your payment. I will be sure to follow your instructions in the future, and I apologize for any inconvenience." I took the check without looking him in the face, and stuffed it into my pocket, not the one with the finger, the other one. "Anytime," I said, trying to keep my composure. I picked up my bag and hurried towards the steps. "I trust that you will not tell anyone about this incident. It's rather embarrassing, you see." He had 3 girls there, ages 10 to 12, chained up to various fixtures in the house. 2 of them have been identified as missing children. The cops are giving it a few days to identify the 3rd, and maybe whomever that finger belonged to, before releasing the story to the public. Better to give the parents a heads up than have them find out on the news. Charles is in jail right now. As it turns out, he really is a lawyer. But I think he's pretty fucked. How am I doing? Well, I can't sleep, and I'm having waking nightmares. Haven't done any jobs since this happened, haven't even answered my phone.
Sleeping yet? Didn't think so. Next story's up. And yeah, it's worse. You're welcome.
When Little Sally Falls Asleep, We Pray That No One Dies, by Richard Saxon. There's an orphanage situated in northern Pennsylvania, in a small town so isolated from the rest of the world that it might as well not exist. Why in God's name anyone decided to put Dawson's Home for Special Children here, I'll never know. But, without any other opportunities in life, I'm stuck here until the day I draw my last breath. Don't get me wrong, now that I've been here for well over a decade, I'd never leave. If I can give even a single one of the children a better future in life, this pain will have been well worth it. But, the kids they send up here, aren't exactly ordinary. To most, these kids might sound like mythical beings, or just deluded stories told by someone suffering from mental illness. Honestly, that was my first impression as well. But then they showed me Laura, the girl that never aged. She'd been 10 for generations, but even her mind never matured, because her memory kept getting wiped on her birthday, leaving her in a perpetual cycle that never ended. I tried to figure out her name, but she couldn't remember. All she knew was that her parents had called her Little Sally, but where they'd gone, she didn't understand. After she'd finished eating, she just started talking. She never mentioned what happened to her before we found her, but rather about her favorite animals, the climbing tree in her backyard, and the playground near her school. I did my best to decipher the clues, but at her young age, she didn't give me much to go on. When I tried to ask about the parents again, she fell silent. She just refused to talk about them, but based on the bruises and malnourished form, we suspected abuse. Despite all that, she was the perfect child, and though we couldn't quite figure out what had happened to her, we were happy to have her by our side. On top of it all, I almost let myself believe she wasn't cursed with strange abilities. At least until the first night she spent at Dawson's. We always give the newcomers a separate room for the first night, to adjust them to the new settings. Sally was no expectation, and we fully intended on integrating her into our large family once morning rolled around. She just needed time. She seemed to like that idea, and with that, I left her alone for the night. "Sally, did you do all of this?" I asked in shock. It was an odd answer, because she didn't look tired. She was as fresh as she'd been the night before. I sat down next to her, as she went on to her next drawing of a princess riding a dragon over the treetops. "You like trees, huh?" I asked, not sure what to say. Was something wrong with the room? Was that why you couldn't sleep? "No, I just can't sleep very much." "What do you mean?" I was taken aback by her last statement. "My dreams?" "How did you know I had bad dreams?" In the end, Sally didn't need a bed to sleep on, as she could just stay awake. Still, we wanted to give her a place that belonged to her, among the other kids. They all embraced her with open arms, and went on to show her the different places in the building. She quickly became one of us. Every now and then she'd come running to me when the other kids were having nightmares. They scared her, but she was always more concerned about them. She wanted me to help comfort them, to let them know they weren't alone in their bad dreams. It became a part of my daily routine, one I came to appreciate. Sally would let me know about others' nightmares, and I'd come to the rescue. Things were going well, but as all things eventually must, the good times came to an end. About 1 year after Sally came to us, I found her unconscious on the ground. It was the first time I'd seen her so still, as if all her energy had left her tiny body, and it terrified me beyond words. She didn't seem wounded or anything, and she was definitely breathing, albeit a tad erratically. In a way, it looked as if she was dreaming, running away from something terrible. I picked her up in my arms, and carried her to the nursing station as we awaited a doctor. The orphanage was too far out in the countryside for an ambulance to reach us, which meant we didn't have much in terms of help, apart from the single, local doctor. The staff rushed towards the screen, to find Daniel getting fused with the wall. His entire body had gotten entangled in the concrete surrounding him, and we could hear his bones crack under the immense weight. He screamed in agony, but trying to pull him out proved a futile task. All we could do was stare as he sunk deeper into the wall. "The sledgehammer!" I yelled as I held onto his arm. "I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to fall asleep. I killed Daniel," she cried. "You dreamed about Daniel?" I asked. She nodded. "What did you see?" It would take another year before she started hanging out with the other children. It was around the time of her 8th birthday, and she was playing hide and seek with Alexander. He was oddly good at the game, at least for a kid with no face, but on the 6th or so round, Sally never came to look for him. We were all standing around in horrified silence, and I was just praying that Sally would wake up before someone died. After a few minutes, the ground started feeling wet. I shined the light down at the ground, only to realize it had turned crimson red. The air reeked of metal, and I quickly figured out that we were all standing in a pool of blood that was rising rapidly. The screams the kids let out were heartbreaking, but they were muffled by the thick concrete walls around us, meaning no one on the outside could hear us. I must have lasted 2 minutes before my body gave in, and just as I inhaled a lungful of blood, the entire basement reverted back to its native state, meaning that Sally had finally awoken from her slumber. The blood vanished in the blink of an eye, and the door reappeared. Once I'd regained my senses, I looked around at the kids and staff. Most were fine, coughing up chunks of partially coagulated blood, but James wasn't breathing. I rushed to his side, still struggling to catch my breath. Then I started CPR. Sally was devastated, but despite the nightmare-inducing event, not a single person had died. That time though, we couldn't keep Sally's curse a secret. The children put 2 and 2 together, and Sally once again became an outcast, even among her own friends. But on the rare occasion that it wouldn't work, people had a tendency to get seriously wounded. On her 10th birthday, Sally dreamed that the building was on fire. Luckily, everyone got out in time, mostly suffering light burns and some smoke inhalation. Once she woke up, the building was fine, as if the fire never happened. Sally woke up from that dream relatively quickly, but she'd fall asleep again that very afternoon. That time, we just caught a glimpse of Mr. Sin walking down the hallway, blood dripping from his briefcase filled with skin. But he'd come from the kitchen, where we found Mrs. Ingrid's son lying on the floor. The entirety of her skin was missing, stripped from the underlying flesh. She still writhed around in pain when we found her, but her body wouldn't last long. Before we could even try to get help, she died from shock. That was just the beginning of our living nightmare, because as Sally hit puberty, her slumber increased drastically in frequency. It went from being a once-a-year occurrence, to 2, then 3. Before she even hit 14, her dreams had become a bi-monthly occurrence, ones that were wounding, or even killing both the staff and children. She knew it herself, that her dreams would inevitably end up killing everyone she loved, and we couldn't deny that fact. But, running away wouldn't stop the dreams, neither would locking her up. She tried using different drugs to keep herself awake, but her efforts were all fruitless. Nothing could keep her awake. That's why she'd asked me to take her out to the fields, because she wanted one final moment of happiness, to just pretend that everything would be fine. She'd considered ending her own life on numerous occasions, but couldn't find the strength to do it. "I'm sorry," she mumbled. "I don't know. I failed Sally, like I've failed so many of the children at the orphanage before. But I keep trying, because if I just save a single person, it will have been worth it."
Something's still listening, and it wants more. Next story. Just don't say its name.
The Most Important Meal, by BGGTR73. Mama always said breakfast was the most important meal of the day. Even when she got sick, she made sure we had a good breakfast and something different every day. We'd wake up on weekends to the smell of bacon, or maybe sweet rolls in the oven. Even during the week, Mama always made sure we at least had a bowl of cereal or oatmeal before school. We always had 4 to 5 kinds of cereal so we could always have variation. Mama loved breakfast. Today I poured me and Joel some Cheerios in our bowls. We had that yesterday, and I wanted oatmeal or eggs, but we were out. We were out of almost everything except a couple cans of soup and a couple boxes of cereal. We had cereal all day yesterday because the only soup left was split pea and some tomato, which we both hated. He was making the same pattern over and over. He would start from his favorite perch on the top stair of his porch, legs dangling down the stairs. After a few seconds he would stand up, walk to the hose and fill the bucket, walk to the coop and dump the bucket into the trough, walk back and put the bucket back, and then sit back down on the step. By the time we got close, we saw him do it 6 or 7 times. He must have been doing it for a while because the whole area was thick with mud. His dog Ty was drinking out of the trough and he looked full and healthy. Told Joel I guess I knew where the chickens went. Up close, I could see he was sick like Mom had been, thin, 'cause he had forgotten to eat, tired like Mom 'cause he had started doing something and never remembered to stop. He wouldn't stop until he died, now. I looked at Joel and he was staring at Mrs. King on her porch. She had half fallen out of her chair. Looks like she was knitting a blanket when she started forgetting. Part of her arm was red and bloody. Joel threw up and said it wasn't the chickens keeping the dog fat. The big house closest to the corner was where the richest family in town lived. They had to be rich because they had 3 cars that all worked just fine, and they owned the gas station and were the only people that really owned anything in town besides their own house. They were the first to leave in their big truck when the president made his announcement. The dad stopped by all the houses and told everyone if they were smart they would go too. They had twins in the grade behind me, so I was kinda sad to see them go and hoped they would be back. now I didn't think they would. They had just left everything and gone. Dad had stopped there to borrow one of their cars when he left for tools and food, because our car didn't work most of the time anyway. It was getting definitely past noon by now, and Dad still hadn't come back. We were scared but didn't want to admit to each other that we knew something was wrong. Maybe Dad started forgetting and just kept driving. Maybe looters took his car. Maybe something else bad happened. We didn't say anything, just ran back home and locked the doors. It was early, but maybe if we went to sleep now we would wake up tomorrow and Dad would be home. Today I poured me and Joel some Cheerios in our bowls. We had that yesterday, and I wanted oatmeal or eggs but we were out. We were out of almost everything except a couple cans of soup and a couple boxes of cereal. We had cereal all day yesterday because the only soup left was split pea and some tomato which we both hated.
And now, as the hour gets cold, and the shadows stretch long into the corners of your room, it's time.
Yeah. Chew the spooky violin. But seriously, this next one? Even I didn't sleep after hearing it.
I've seen something coming from you.
What? Just because I sleep in a coffin and collect cursed dolls?
Among other things. This is the final descent for the night. One last story, dragged up from the depths of the disturbed and deranged.
Go ahead. Turn off the lights. We dare you.
This is HorrorSlop.
I'd been hired alongside Mark to guard an empty room in a small town storage facility. To the best of my knowledge, it had just appeared one day out of nowhere. Since then, only 3 people had gone inside, all of which died within a minute. During their short visit into the room, a camera had been set up, delivering a constant, live feed through which we could observe the room. Though nothing had ever been seen within, an eerie aura surrounded the place. We were only to contact the team leader, Dr. Henderson, if any activity was recorded within the room, be it actual movement, or just sounds heard through the door. Other than that, we were left to our own devices, which meant we could mostly slack around and talk. Still, the cameras showed nothing. We just contacted the team leader as commanded, who always seemed utterly uninterested during his visits. "Sounds again?" he asked. "Yeah, it's," Mark tried to explain before getting cut off. "It's not important what you hear, as long as the screen remains empty. Just keep your eyes peeled, and let me know if anything changes." Years went on like that, and we stood posted in front of that empty room. The metal door that separated us from unknown horrors remained untouched, and as far as we were concerned, nothing would ever change that. We followed orders, got paid, and that was it. At least until we heard someone knock from the other side of the door. "Do you hear that?" I asked Mark, who seemed transfixed by the sound himself. I picked up the emergency phone, and just pressed 1. It prompted an alarm that immediately alerted the team leader. We'd already been through the procedure enough times to make it an unimportant event. Still, something was different. Despite the sounds we'd heard over the years, no one had ever knocked on the door. I turned around to find him pale as a sheet. His face was drenched in sweat, and his eyes were fixated on the screen. I took a few steps closer, just to make sure my eyes weren't deceiving us both. At first, I couldn't tell exactly what it was. It looked sort of like a deformed chair, as if someone who'd never seen a piece of furniture before had been instructed to put a chair together. On top of it, lay a music box. "Report," was all he said as he greeted us. "There's something inside the room, I tried to explain before another bout of knocking shut me up. With that, the image on the screen got replaced by static. Whatever was in the room had interfered with the feed. Just let me out, it's so cold in here, the voice said through the door. Yo, you two, STA, stay here. I'm going to get a cleanup crew, our doctor stuttered. Don't open the door, just stay here and make sure nothing gets in or out. Do you see him? Mark asked after a moment of silence. He nodded. It was Alexander. It was my son. Your son that went missing 7 years ago? I asked, confused. Stop it. I ordered as I pointed my rifle in his direction. It doesn't make any sense, Mark. Your son is dead, how could he possibly be inside that room? Mark, you're not yourself. Please, just calm down and let me deal with this. Just take a few steps back and come with me, I said carefully. Mark, don't do this. The doctor will be here with help any second. Please. I begged. Whatever is in there, it's not your son. He was clearly crying, yet his words carried no emotion. I'm so sorry, he said, before something violently pulled him into the room. Mark. I called out, still stuck to my chair. There I sat in absolute silence, praying that the doctor would return with reinforcements. I could hardly see 2 feet in front of me, but there was definitely something moving around in the room. Just vague shapes emerging through the door, producing wet footsteps as they walked in my direction. I didn't dare to make a sound. Mark had vanished, and in his place, the air had filled with a sickly, metallic stench. Dr. Henderson was the one to untie me. My wrists were raw from the struggle, but I was left otherwise unharmed. It was Mark, he went in the room. There lay 100 pieces of broken flesh strewn not only across the floor, but the walls and ceiling. They defied gravity and simply covered every available surface with bloody chunks of meat. That, mixed with the clothes fragments, made it easy enough to identify the mangled corpse. It was Mark. Then, I noticed something that immediately caused me to puke onto the floor. I saw a chunk of flesh containing an eye. Though it was absolutely impossible, the eye darted around the room in panic. It blinked, it even responded to light, it was alive. Another chunk contained part of his mouth. It moved around in strange directions, as if trying to scream, but being unable to. Then we saw a piece of his heart, still contracting pointlessly, and muscle fibers hopelessly trying to move limbs that weren't there anymore. But, he's alive. I said, still not believing it. The guards closed the door without speaking a word, and started putting plates of metal over it. A part of me wondered why they hadn't done that from the get-go, but I couldn't bring myself to ask any questions. I just nodded. Did they touch you? And no. The crew set up a perimeter with guards and cameras facing the door. But I feared the damage had already been done. Whatever existed inside that room had been far beyond the rules of our own reality, and now they were free. What are we going to do now? I finally got the guts to ask. We're gonna have to kill everyone in this town. TCC.
And there you have it, dear listeners. One final scream, echoing into the void.
Yeah. Void screams, eternal darkness, I get it. Can I eat now?
We're still on air, Roxy.
Oh no, just the spooky FCC is gonna haunt us for breaking the mood.
If you enjoyed tonight's descent into depravity, don't forget to like, subscribe, and what does he always say?
Stab that bell icon like it's your ex possessed by a demon, and leave a comment telling us what story made you question. I have choices.
And if you survive the night, we'll be waiting.
Same dat time, same that crypt.
You're the reason we have complaints, you know that.
You're welcome.